When you go into the exam at the end of year 11, the examiner is going to be looking to see if you understand a number of things. Basically, that you have the ability to process the necessary skills to be able to perform a given character on stage. So with that in mind, we're going to answer this question today. How important is social context? Well, the answer is very important. But before that, I'm just going to answer the question, what is social context? The society that you live in has particular beliefs, it functions in a certain way, and the way that the society functions affects how you will behave. Where you're brought up really affects who you are. You may be a Christian because you've been brought up in a country which is predominantly Christian. If you were brought up somewhere in the Middle East, you may predominantly be a Muslim or something like that. So the society that you're in affects the beliefs and the way that you behave. For instance, in this culture, it's not unusual for people to go out drinking alcohol at a weekend, for instance. Whereas if you went to another culture, they just don't do that kind of thing. Another culture, again, maybe in the Middle East, they don't do drinking alcohol at weekends. So the way that we behave is very much dependent on what society we live in. If we understand social context, we start to understand how characters in plays behave. So if we take the Crucible, for example, what was the social context of the Crucible? Well, we know that the Puritans left England in 1620 on the Mayflower ship because they were escaping persecution from the Church of England. They wanted greater reforms and they weren't getting them, and they were being persecuted for it, they were being burned at the stake. And so they got on a ship, they left for the new land where they wanted to create a society which was based entirely on the Bible. Now if you think about a society which is based entirely on the Bible, what's that going to look like? What are the people going to believe? So when you come to write in the exam, you need to look at the social context because it affects the way that a character behaves. Let me give you one example from the Crucible. John and Elizabeth. John Proctor has had an affair. Think about how that affair would appear in a society which is based entirely on the Bible. Where people don't believe that divorce is right in that society, they also look very they look very badly upon people who've had affairs. So, due to the social context there, John and Elizabeth are trying to keep a secret from everybody. Elizabeth is keeping a secret because in that society she knows that she should be a good wife to her husband, so she doesn't mention the affair. But she can't help it. She can't help letting the affair affect her. Let's just watch this clip from the second act of the Crucible to see how the fact that John has had an affair comes out in Elizabeth's actions rather than an outright condemnation of him herself.
I think if the crop comes good, I'll buy Joseph Ward's heifer. How would that please you?
Aye, it would.
I mean to please you, Elizabeth.
It would be well if you went to Salem. Abigail told you it had not to do with witchcraft, did she not? They say Ezekiel Taylor's clerk of the court now. Can you not tell him? God forbid you keep that from the court, John.
I wonder they do believe her.
They do. Mary Warren says that Abigail walks the crowd's path like the sea for Israel. I think you must go at once. I would go tonight, John. Will you?
I will think on it.
You cannot keep
Say I will think on it. proof what she told me, Elizabeth. We were alone together. I have no proof of what she said.
You were alone with her.
For a moment alone, aye.
And it is not as you told me.
For a moment is all there are others close by.
Do as you wish then.
Woman, I'll not have your suspicion anymore.
No, John, if it were not Abigail that you must go to hurt, would you falter now? I think not.
You will not judge me more, Elizabeth. I forgot Abigail.
And I.
Spare me, you forget nothing and forgive nothing. In the 7 months since she has gone, I have not moved from there to there without I think to please you. But an everlasting funeral still marches round your heart.
John, you are not open with me. You saw her with the crowd, you said. Now,
Please, my honesty, no.
John, I am only...
No more! I should have roared you down when first you told me your suspicion, but I wilted, and like a Christian, I confessed. But you're not God, Elizabeth! That you look for some goodness in me. Judge me not.
The magistrate sits in your heart that judges you. I never thought you but a good man, John. Only somewhat bewildered.
Oh, Elizabeth. Your justice would freeze beer.
So did you see that there? Elizabeth wouldn't say to John, I'm angry at you at having an affair. She wants to carry on and be a good Christian woman. But she can't help but have that at the back of her mind. But her society is dictating to her that she should behave in a particular way. She has to be a good wife to her husband, regardless of what he's done. So, you see that social context is very important to understanding how a person acts in a play, how a character behaves. If you get the social context right, everything else really begins to fall into place, and the way that you play the character will start to make a little bit more sense. So there's no point in you going into the exam and saying, I will play the character in this way, I do this on this line, I do this on this line, I do that on this line, and not providing any reasons why. Some of the reasons might be, you might say, for instance, if I was to play Elizabeth in this scene, I would do this or I would do that. But you need to add a because she is trying to serve her husband. Okay, she's trying to serve her husband like the good wife that she should be, because her society dictates that she should be this way. So if you start talking about society, you show the examiner who is marking your paper that you understand the context of the play. And if you understand the context, that's where you start to gain high marks.